Okay, so here we are inside of Unreal Engine. And before we get started, I wanted to point out a couple things. The first one is this project is ray traced, so it may be a little heavy on your performance. And if that's the case, I just wanted to show you a couple things before we get started on how to alleviate that. So the very first one is by going up here to the Settings tab. And if you drop down into Engine Scalability Settings, you'll have a few options here. Those might help with your performance. The second thing is you're going to go ahead and hit your tilde key, which is the key below the escape button on your keyboard. And that should bring up the console command. And we're going to look up a command called Force All Ray Tracing Effects right there. Go ahead and hit space and then 0. And hit enter. When you do that, that's going to disable all the ray tracing effects on the lighting. It should increase the performance pretty dramatically. However, you will be devoid of the nice ray tracing effects and nice shadows with the lighting. Since this isn't a lighting class, you could go ahead and do that and not really suffer any consequences as far as the fear of losing something out of this class. You won't. But for me, as a virtual cinematographer, I'm looking for the highest fidelity image possible. And in that case, that will be with ray traced lighting and ray traced shadows. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that back on by hitting the tilde key and the up arrow on my keyboard. That brings up the previous command, and I'm going to hit -1 to turn on the previous settings that I just had. And you'll notice right away, all the shadows are soft and nice again. So that was one. The other thing I wanted to bring up was that this class is going to be followed chronologically, and it's designed that way. But understand that a lot of the settings can and will affect one another. So at any given point, we may be jumping back and forth between certain settings. Just understand that, don't worry, we'll reiterate them either in the future module or we'll definitely develop on anything that we touch upon right away down the line. So don't worry about all that. So let's go ahead and jump into the project. If you go to your content browser, you'll see the Intro to Virtual Cinematography folder here. Go ahead and double click that. And we're going to go look for Maps and Main. Under Main, go ahead and load Module 2. So that loaded Module 2, just like so. You'll see that our actors are in place, but they're not set yet. So the very first thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and appear to the cinematics drop down menu and hit Module 2. So what that does is it loads the sequence for this scene, for this map, and it places our actors in their places. So don't worry too much about this tab here, the sequencer tab. We will be learning more about it down the line, just not right now. So for the time being, this is just to place the actors where they're supposed to be. So here we are in our set, in our lit scene. We have 2 actors. They're blocked out for us. The scene is lit with mostly an overhead lighting setup here that I did for you. We won't be touching upon lighting. I just wanted to make something that was going to be easy to look at and be able to look at from different angles and still look pretty nice. It won't be flat. It won't be overexposed or what have you. So this was a pretty good scene for that. And also, it's a scene that we've seen in a lot of movies, just as I showed in the previous module. We'll be seeing dinner scenes. You will be seeing them as a virtual cinematographer or as a real DP on set. This is a very common scene. So if we can make this look cinematic, then we'll be well on our way to making other scenes cinematic. I think it's important to start with the basics and then grow from there. So that's why I chose this. And we can go ahead and pretty much get started. A couple things here. We're in the viewport view right here, and you'll see it's a little bit busy with all these icons. I just wanted to show you how to turn those off. So if you come up here to the show menu right here and drop down and under sprites, we can go ahead and turn off the lighting ones. So we won't be using or moving those too much or at all. And then we can also click that menu again and turn off the volumes. So hide all volumes. Okay. Now that the viewport's a little cleaner, we can go ahead and start working. So if you don't know, the way to move around in the viewport, and this is not with a camera right now, is to right-click the mouse button and WASD keys to move around. Once you know how to do that, you'll be able to move cameras this way as well. So here we are in the viewport, and the first thing we need for this scene is a camera. We don't have one. Just like in real life, we want to get started with a camera and go from there. So let's go ahead over to this window, the Place Actors window, and look for Cine. And there we are. We have our Cine camera actor, and we can go ahead and drag that in to the scene, just like so. Now that it's in here, we can take a look and place it and take a look through it if we want, and rotate it, all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and take a look through this camera. It is created with just the default setting. We will be adjusting those down the line. But for now, let's take a look at what it looks like right now. So if you go over here to the Perspective tab and drop down and hit Cine Camera Actor, it'll place us in the view of that camera. So there we are, again, with default settings. So focus is off, aspect ratio, and sensor size, all that stuff is not set yet. But for the time being, I just wanted to show you, this is how you look through a camera or pilot a camera. And this is how you can set up your first frame. And that's what we're going to be working on in this module, is just setting up a rough frame for Ziva here, a close-up of her, something like that in that range. But before we do all that, I wanted to show you a couple different ways to create a camera. So let's go ahead and use this button right here to eject. Back into the viewport, there's our camera. And let's go ahead and delete that for now. And we're going to create another one a different way. So my personal favorite will be, once you're in the viewport, this drop-down menu here, you can go ahead and create camera here, create cinema camera actor. But before we click that, I want to show you that by doing that, you can kind of already compose a shot and kind of look around through the viewport, even though we don't have a camera, and set up a shot like so, for example, and then go back to that menu and create camera here, Cine camera actor. What that does is it creates a Cine camera actor. There it is in our world outliner. And now we can possess it the same way we did before, Perspective, Cine camera actor 2 this time. And there we go. And it's a camera that was created with default settings right in the same spot as we were in the viewport. It's a very handy tool for if you're navigating the viewport looking for shots and you like something, as opposed to dropping a camera in, rotating it, possessing it, finding a shot. This will already kind of eliminate and circumvent all that stuff by just creating the camera right where you are. So that's why I like it. The third way, let's go ahead and eject again. The third way will be to come over here to the Sequencer tab. And as you see right here, this icon, we'll create a new camera and set it as the current camera cut. And we're not going to deal with camera cuts right now, but we will down the line. So this might be helpful for when we get there. So go ahead and click this button. And as you see, it created a camera and I already possessed it and everything. So there it is right here. And again, we can just go ahead and compose the shot and go from there. So you'll see that the other camera is in the frame. The easy way to toggle that off is by hitting the G button. That turns on the game mode. And game mode just basically turns off anything that you wouldn't see in game, or in this case, in cinematics. So go ahead and hit G when you want to see it, and click it and maneuver it if you want, but G again to turn it back off. Okay. So those are the three ways to create a camera. I'm going to go ahead and eject again. So just to recap, you can use the Place Actors, look up Cine, drag and drop it, right? You can use this menu right here and create the camera here, Cine Camera Actor. Or you can use the Sequencer tab and use the Create a New Camera button right here as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete both of these really quick. And we're going to go ahead and start composing a very rough shot of our a close-up of our actress here, Ziva. And we're going to use our Create Camera Here option, which is my favorite, like I said. And there we are, created, and we're going to look through it and compose a rough shot. Again, we are not, we don't have the correct settings for sensor size or aspect ratio or anything like that, which we will look in the next module. But for the time being, we're just kind of placing it and roughing it in for where we're going to want it once we have all those settings dialed in. So if you go over here, and while you're selected on the Cine Camera Actor, you'll see the current camera settings. drop down, look for this purple bar, which is um, that'll to let you know that you're in the focus settings. And if you drag this all the way to the left, you'll see that we can find focus. And we're going to go ahead and do that just so, like so, somewhere in that vicinity. And if you need a little help to find the focus, you can hit this button, Draw Debug Focus Plane, and that will give you a visual cue as to where the focus plane actually is. So that would be really helpful in real life if we had that, but we don't, and we're an engine, and so we have some extra goodies like this, so that's great. Go ahead and toggle that off. And that's pretty much it for this module. I like to keep things pretty organized. Before we move on, let's go ahead and put this in a camera actor and rename it and put it in a new folder. So if you select this camera and then hit this folder icon over here, it'll automatically place it right into that folder. So we're going to call this 01_cameras. And you'll see it goes right to the top. We're going to drag that into our Intro to Virtual Cine folder here. And now we have the camera folder. Let's also rename our camera and call it closeup_Ziva. So we know what we're dealing with down the line. There we have it. I wanted to show you one last thing before we move on. You'll see that the viewport is in its basic setting here. There's another setting though called cinematic viewport, which I like to work with when we're doing stuff like this. So I'm going to go ahead and click that on, and you'll see that there's a timeline down here. There's the name of the sequence that you're currently in. There's a couple other tools like grids and whatnot, crosshairs. These can help for framing and other things like that. You can even do a letterbox if you want. Just wanted to show you that as an option. So I like to work in this mode. We've actually popped out of the camera view. Let's go back in again. And there we have it. So again, we will be setting all these settings later. Don't worry about the framing just yet. Just kind of roughing it in, okay? So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and move on to module 3, where we'll be learning how to set up the sensor size and aspect ratio, among other things.